watching Jack and the Beanstalk and notice the credit for the color process of Abbott and Costello's first color film, you might be asking yourself, what's so super about SuperCineColor? The story of Cinecolor's success and ultimate downfall spans just over 20 years, but has its roots in much older companies. The Cinecolor Corporation was formed in 1932 by William T. Crespinell, an inventor and cameraman with over 2 decades of working in color movie photography, first entering the business at Cinecolor in 1907. He later became the Prisma Company's chief photographer and joined the Multicolor Corporation in 1927. Despite being purchased at one point by tycoon Howard Hughes, the company never saw financial success, and Crespinell, with the help of financier Alan McCormick, purchased the patents from Multicolor in 1932 and formed Cinecolor Incorporated to continue his work. Both Multicolor and Cinecolor use the same type of photography called Bipack color, wherein 2 strips of film are loaded in a package that feeds through the camera gate with their emulsions facing each other. The negative closest to the lens is sensitive to blue and green light only. It will not record red light. This is known as orthochromatic or orthofilm. The orthofilm's emulsion then has a red dye on the surface that acts as a filter for the film behind it, which is panchromatic or sensitive to all light. Since the first strip of film has recorded the blue-green light, the rest of the white light is discarded by the red filter, and the panchromatic film only records the red light passing through. Thus, 2 strips of film, one carrying a blue-green record and one carrying a red record, are exposed. The special stocks for both negatives and prints were produced by both the Eastman Kodak and the DuPont companies. These 2 negatives are then developed, and the red dye is washed out of the blue-green negative. We now have 2 strips of negative that are ready to print. For the final print, the 2 negatives are sandwiched and exposed on each side of a special type of print film called duplatized film. Now, unlike normal print stock, which has a base side and a photosensitive emulsion side, duplatized stock has an emulsion side on both sides of the base. This allows for 2 separate negatives to print 2 separate images at the same time. Both of these emulsions are impregnated with a water-soluble yellow dye to prevent the light rays from the printer reaching the other emulsion. During the development process, this dye will be washed out. Both negatives are exposed to either emulsion layer, and then the film is processed. At this point, what is left is a film that has 2 black and white images that are slightly different. After processing, these long 1,000-foot rolls of film were then floated on chemicals using surface tension along a battery of up to 50 tanks, each 50 feet long. Each of these tanks contained toners, or chemicals, that would replace the silver particles on one side of the stock, the appropriate blue-green color, or the appropriate red color. For the side that was printed with the blue-green negative, that means that the positive image should be toned its complementary color, red, and for the red negative, blue-green toner. When put in registration on top of one another and projected, a vivid, if somewhat limited, spectrum of color would give pleasing results, with acceptable skin tones, brown earth, and blue skies. As both sides of the film have emulsions on them, and those emulsions are prone to scratching, Cinecolor added an extra step called peerlessing, in which scratch-resistant chemicals were vaporized onto the film in a chamber that looked somewhat like an iron lung. The 1940s saw tremendous growth for the company, with most of the major studios using their services at some point. Outdoor budget westerns benefited greatly from the process, which could be used with existing camera equipment with minor changes.
You might never catch up with him. Even if you do, you might not be able to ride him.
I'll catch him all right, and I'll ride him too.
The blue skies and brown sands of the American West could be recreated with fidelity and without the added cost that Cinecolor's rival, Technicolor, added to any budget.
One of the West's most daring horsemen tames the wildest stallion of them all before your eyes. Wild Stallion, a story that goes back many years to an Indian raid on a western homestead, and a colt's escape from death to become the storied leader of a wild horse herd and its protector from the wolf packs.
Technicolor had, for over a decade, however, solved the problem of reaching a fuller spectrum by the use of specially designed cameras that added a beam splitter and a 3rd strip of film to the Bipack color process, thus adding a green record. This increased their need for lighting significantly over Cinecolor, but their dye transfer printing system yielded single emulsion prints that avoided focus issues that could be inherent to Cinecolor's duplicitized print stock. Development of Cinecolor continued, and with the addition of personnel, the company designed a 3-color process in the early 1940s.
This is a portrait of the famous chicken that crossed the road. This one here is the chicken somebody promised in every part. While this is Henny Penny.
Initially, Cinecolor couldn't print anything with this process past animation, and so it saw limited use. Technicolor and Kodak both owned patents that kept each other in collusion until their patents expired in 1948. That became the watershed year for Kodak to unleash its new color stock, Eastmancolor. The company found the system not ready for Hollywood service, however, and it wasn't until 1951 that a combination of both negative and print stocks were made available for production. Unlike Cinecolor's Bipack system, or Technicolor's 3-strip and die printing system, Eastmancolor was everything rolled into one film stock. Using what are known as die couplers, many layers of silver halide emulsion react chemically to form cyan, magenta, and yellow dye particles. These particles act the same way silver particles act as grain to make up a black and white image. With Eastmancolor, and Ansco's similar Anscochrome now on the market, Cinecolor rolled out its 3-color process in 1951. For 3-color printing, an elaborate system of color separation negatives augmented the lab's 2-color process. The first step are a series of black and white separation negatives that are made through red, green, and blue filters, creating what are known as cyan, magenta, and yellow positives, even though these are on black and white stock. The color names indicate the complementary colors these separation films represent. These positives are then optically printed into negatives, which are essentially the black and white representations of the red, green, and blue particles seen on the Eastmancolor negative. Cinecolor's 3-color printing was a laborious process with many steps, many of which will be simplified here. Like their 2-color process, the red negative is printed on one side of duplicitized film, and the green negative is printed on the other side. At this point, both sides are developed, fixed, and toned. The red negative side with the soundtrack is toned cyan, and then resensitized and printed once more with the blue record. Since the silver particles from the first pass have been turned into cyan dye, they won't be affected. After development, the blue record has been turned into a silver positive image, which is then toned with yellow dye, and then the film is washed, flipped, and the side printed with the green negative is toned with a magenta dye. The final print is then washed and peerless.
I didn't know. Honest, I didn't know it was...
You know, right now, you don't look like somebody on a manhunt.
I'll never give up.
Neither will the law. But sometimes even we fail.
If the law fails, I won't.
Good morning, Rose. I got you in my sights, Rose.
Why was her beauty hidden from the world, her life under constant threat? Unhand her!
D'Artagnan!
D'Artagnan! Here! Now, Porthos!
D'Artagnan!
There's been some sort of vague rumor floating around that a railroad might come to Miami. Actual construction from Titusville South will begin the 15th of next month.
When are you going north to find yourself a wife?
I don't know. Might not go now.
The resulting SuperCineColor prints are bright and colorful, with an emphasis on blue. With Cinecolor's labs churning out millions of feet of film per week, for a short time it looked like SuperCineColor was a viable print option for Eastmancolor. Opticals, such as dissolves and wipes, which would take a second and third generation of film to make, looked terrible on Eastmancolor, but were done with ease with SuperCineColor. However, as soon as the system was implemented, it was doomed to be shelved. The Donner Corporation, a Philadelphia investor firm, bought the company in 1952, and the lab began investing in Anscocolor. Trying to distance itself from the 2-color process, even though they were still processing features made that way, the company was rebranded as Color Corporation of America in 1953 and began making Cinecolor, SuperCineColor, and Anscocolor prints.
The
the slave girl who fought like a wildcat for Captain Kidd's favor.
I am at your mercy. Are you going to punish me?
That's a harsh word for it.
Treasure-bearing Spanish galleon.
1954 was the last year the lab produced Cinecolor prints of any kind. Another Burbank outfit, Houston Fearless, was looking to expand their laboratories and purchased Color Corporation of America and its assets. Somewhat fittingly, Houston Fearless was the extension of Howard Hughes and Hub Houston's original Houston Development Company, which had supplied both Multicolor and Cinecolor with their original film processing equipment and later their Ansco color processing machines.
This is the drama of the women who fight for a fraction of heaven on earth, living a lifetime in a day, while their men battle with eternity. Among many notable star performances are those of Robert Stack, Colleen Gray, Richard Arlen, Julie Bishop, Leon Ames, Amanda Blake.
I can't stand that noise anymore. It'll be gone in a moment.
Meteor approaching, converging on glide path, speed about 18,000.
I'm gonna take a crack at it.
No. Continue course.
Richard, return at once.
Believe me, here is yet another remarkable motion picture experience.
Get me out of here, it's too hot. I can't see the instrument.
We'll land you by remote control.
I can't stand it, get me out of here.
The last of the Cinecolor prints were made. In two-color, the last feature was Pride of the Bluegrass from Allied Artists in April of 1954, and the last three-color film was Hunters of the Deep from December of that year.
Here's a great motion picture that captures all the color, the scope, the stirring human drama of the turf world. Lloyd Bridges as the small-time trainer with big-time ideas, who was too hot-headed for his own good.
As long as you're training for me, you'll do as I say.
Well, in that case, you can take your horse out of my barn.
Well, of all the...
And if you run him Saturday, I'll report you to the SPCA.
Vera Miles as the racetrack gypsy, who was too pretty for anyone's good.
All in all, 36 features were shot for SuperCineColor Printing. Houston Fearless scrapped the Cinecolor processing equipment, moved the rest of their equipment to the lab in Los Angeles, and sold the building to Technicolor, who would use it as their own research lab for many years. Spared the indignity of becoming a parking lot, the building still exists, quite fittingly, one of the last photochemical laboratories in the world, now operated by Photochem.